If you own a Jayco, Keystone, Airstream, or Tiffin, you've been buying from one company the whole time. For 45 years, they stayed completely separate, on purpose. But in February 2026, Thor broke that rule and folded its biggest brands into two rival chains of command. Not because business was booming, because they're mid-downturn. That's not panic. That's a bet. And it's about to change which of these brands still feels like the one you fell in love with. From one bankrupt trailer company to the biggest name in RVing. Most people who own a Jayco, a Keystone, or an Airstream have no idea they all report to the same parent company. That's by design. Thor built an empire by buying beloved brands and then leaving them alone. The story starts in 1980. Wade Thompson, an entrepreneur originally from New Zealand, and Peter Orthwein, an investment banker, bought Airstream from Beatrice Foods. Airstream was a mess at the time. It had lost $12 million the year before the sale. Thompson and Orthwein turned it into a $1 million profit machine in their very first year of ownership, just by tightening quality and cutting waste. The company name, Thor, literally comes from smashing their two last names together, Thompson and Orthwein. That turnaround set the template for everything that followed. Thor didn't build new brands from scratch. Thor bought struggling or undervalued ones, fixed the operations, and let each one keep running its own show. General Coach in 1982, Dutchman in 1991, Four Winds in 1992, Keystone R5 in 2001, the acquisition that industry historians point to as the moment Thor's rise became unstoppable. Crossroads in 2004, Heartland in 2010, right in the teeth of the Great Recession, when Thor scooped up a company that had just absorbed the wreckage of the bankrupt Fleetwood Enterprises. Then came 2016, the single biggest domino in Thor's history. For years, Thor and a private competitor called Forest River had been locked in an annual argument over which company actually built more RVs. Thor settled that argument permanently by acquiring Jayco, at the time arguably the third largest RV manufacturer in North America. That deal made Thor the undisputed largest RV manufacturer on the planet, a title it still holds today. Thor wasn't finished. In 2019, they spent roughly $2 billion acquiring the Irwin-Hymer Group, instantly transforming Thor from an American RV company into a transatlantic manufacturing giant with serious European market share. In 2021, they added the Tiffin Group, bringing in one of the most respected names in luxury Class A motorhomes, plus Airstream, a components and parts supplier that gave Thor control over pieces of the supply chain most RV shoppers never think about. Here's the number that puts all of that in perspective. As of the middle of 2024, Thor controlled roughly 40% of the entire U.S. and Canadian travel trailer and fifth wheel market. In motorhomes, that number climbs to over 47%. Not a big slice of the pie, nearly half the pie. Across a portfolio that includes Airstream, Jayco, Keystone, Heartland, Tiffin, Thor Motor Coach, Dutchman, Crossroads, Integra, and dozens more brands, most casual RV shoppers don't even realize are related. And through every single one of those acquisitions, Thor kept the same core philosophy. Buy the brand, respect the brand, let the brand run itself. That decentralized structure is exactly why the announcement we're about to break down is such a massive deal. Thor didn't just launch a new product, Thor changed the DNA that built the company in the first place. The numbers behind the empire. Before we get into the announcement itself, you need to understand the environment Thor made this move inside, because context is everything here. Thor's fiscal 2026 has been a genuinely rough year for the RV industry. In the quarter ending April 2026, Thor's North American towable segment, the division that builds travel trailers and fifth wheels, historically the bread and butter of the whole company, got hit hard. Consumer sentiment weakened. Material costs rose because of tariff pressure and inflation. The company had to absorb tens of millions of dollars in restructuring costs across just a few quarters while navigating what leadership itself described as macroeconomic headwinds, lasting longer than almost anyone in the industry expected. And yet, buried inside those same rough quarters, there were pockets of real strength. Thor's North American motorized segment, the division building Class A, B, and C motorhomes, actually grew net sales nearly 8% in one recent quarter, even as the towable side struggled. The European segment grew too. Thor's fiscal second quarter of 2026 delivered an earnings per share result that blew past what analysts expected, even while gross margins were getting squeezed by higher costs. That's a company with real structural strength getting punched by a genuinely bad macro environment, not a company that's fundamentally broken. Now, zoom out to the scale we're actually talking about. Thor reaches the market through roughly 3,500 independent dealer locations spread across North America and Europe. That's not a company selling a boutique product to a niche crowd. That's a distribution network the size of a mid-tier national retailer, built entirely around recreational vehicles. And Thor isn't operating alone at the top. Its two biggest rivals tell you everything about how differently this industry can be run. Forest River, the company Thor spent years fighting for the #1 spot before the Jayco deal settled it, is privately owned by Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, and still runs one of the most aggressively decentralized, founder-style operating models in American manufacturing. Winnebago Industries, publicly traded and headquartered in Iowa, is smaller than Thor but has spent recent years running its own streamlining efforts to stay competitive. Every major player in this industry is wrestling with the exact same question right now. In a shrinking, consolidating dealer landscape, is decentralization still a superpower? Or has it become a liability? That's the exact question Thor answered on February 23, 2026. And the answer they gave shocked a lot of people who followed this company for decades. Quick side note, most car problems come from small things people overlook. I put together a simple longevity guide based on everything I've learned, and it walks you through exactly what to watch for. It's linked in the description below. The announcement that blew up the old model. Here's what actually happened. On February 23, 2026, Thor Industries announced it was reorganizing the majority of its North American RV operating companies into two entirely new groups. Not a merger with an outside company, not a new product line, an internal restructuring of how nearly every major American brand Thor owns gets managed, sourced, and sold. Group 1 is built around Jayco. It includes Jayco itself, along with Integra, Open Range, Heartland, and Tiffin Motorhomes. Ken Walters, the sitting president of Jayco, was named CEO of this entire group while still running Jayco day to day. Group 2 is built around Thor Motor Coach. It includes Thor Motor Coach, Keystone, Dutchman, and Crossroads. Jeff Keimy, president of Thor Motor Coach, leads this group, with Troy James serving as chief operating officer through the transition period. Think about what that actually means. Keystone and Dutchman, two towable brands that used to run completely independent operations, competing for the same dealers, sourcing materials on their own, now sit under one leadership structure. Jayco and Tiffin, one famous for family-friendly towables, the other for six-figure luxury diesel motorhomes, are now part of the same operating group. These are brands with wildly different customers, wildly different price points, and decades of separate identity suddenly sharing a management chain. Why would Thor do this to a strategy that built a nearly 50% share of the motorhome market? The company's own explanation comes down to four forces reshaping the entire RV industry at once. First, dealer consolidation. The independent dealer network Thor relies on has been shrinking and merging for years, meaning fewer, bigger dealers with more negotiating leverage. Second, rising operational scale requirements. Modern manufacturing, from chassis sourcing to component logistics, increasingly rewards size. Third, the rise of enterprise-level strategy. Things like unified data systems and coordinated purchasing power that only work if brands stop operating in silos. And fourth, brand optimization. Figuring out where Thor's 20-plus brands genuinely overlap versus where they're actually cannibalizing each other's sales on the same dealer lot. The company has been quietly laying groundwork for this for years before announcing it. They built out a company-wide data strategy. They started leveraging combined purchasing power specifically on chassis, the rolling frame and drivetrain underneath every motorized RV, and one of the most expensive, most heavily tariff-exposed components in the entire build. They assembled dedicated enterprise teams months before the public announcement, meaning this wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to a bad quarter. It was a plan that had been building quietly for years, dropped publicly the moment leadership felt the foundation was solid enough to support it. And here's the tension at the center of the entire story. Thor insists explicitly that every individual brand keeps its own identity. Jayco still builds Jayco. Tiffin still builds Tiffin. The paint schemes, the dealer relationships, the brand loyalty programs, all of that stays. What changes is everything happening behind the curtain: sourcing, data, standardized processes, and shared enterprise resources. That's either the smartest operational move in Thor's 45-year history, or it's the first crack in the exact culture that made Thor's brands beloved in the first place. Which one it turns out to be depends entirely on execution, and the whole industry is watching to find out. Before we go any further, if this kind of deep dive into what's actually happening behind the scenes in the RV and truck world is your thing, this is exactly what this channel is built around. Hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next one, drop a like, and let me know in the comments which Thor brand you or your family has owned, because I guarantee some of you had no idea it was all under one roof. Now, back to what this actually means for the people buying and driving these things. What this means for RV owners and buyers right now. Let's get practical. If you own a Thor family RV or you're shopping for one, here's the honest breakdown of what this restructuring could mean for you. And it's genuinely a mixed bag depending on where you sit. If you're a current Jayco, Keystone, Heartland, Tiffin, Dutchman, Crossroads, or Thor Motor Coach owner, nothing changes on your existing rig. Same brand name on the door, same dealer network for service and warranty work, at least for now. The restructuring is happening at the corporate and operational level, not at the point where you interact with your local dealership. If you're shopping for a new RV in the next couple of years, the interesting stuff is what's coming. Thor has explicitly said one of the goals here is a unified dealer portal experience across the entire family of companies. If you've ever cross-shopped a Jayco fifth wheel against a Keystone fifth wheel at two different dealer lots with two completely different paperwork processes, financing systems, and parts ordering pipelines, that friction is exactly what this restructuring is designed to eliminate. A more standardized buying and ownership experience, even across different brands, is a realistic outcome here, and that benefits you directly. There's also a real possibility of cost benefits trickling down, though it won't happen overnight. Combined chassis purchasing power across brands that used to negotiate separately is one of the specific synergies Thor called out by name. Chassis costs are one of the biggest line items in building a motorized RV, and they've been under serious tariff pressure. If Thor can negotiate better volume pricing across Thor Motor Coach, Tiffin, and other motorized brands simultaneously instead of separately, that's a real structural cost advantage, one that could eventually show up as more stable pricing or better feature per dollar value on the RVs you're cross-shopping. Now here's the honest counterpoint, and it matters if you're an enthusiast who cares about more than spec sheets. Part of what made brands like Airstream, Jayco, and Tiffin genuinely different from each other wasn't just design, it was culture. Independent leadership teams, independent supplier relationships, independent decision-making about what a brand's customer actually wants. When you consolidate purchasing, data, and operational processes across brands that used to compete internally, there's a real risk of homogenization. The RV world has seen this movie before with other manufacturers. Brands that got folded into shared platforms and slowly lost the quirks and obsessive attention to detail that built their fan base in the first place. That's exactly why Forest River's ownership under Berkshire Hathaway is worth watching closely right now. Forest River has stayed aggressively decentralized, letting individual divisions operate almost like independent small businesses under one financial umbrella. If Thor's consolidated model produces real cost advantages without sacrificing brand character, expect serious pressure on Forest River and Winnebago to follow with their own version of this playbook. If Thor's model instead produces the kind of brand blurring that alienates loyal buyers, expect Forest River's stay decentralized strategy to become the industry's new gold standard, and Thor's restructuring to become a cautionary case study in business schools. Either way, you as the buyer are the one who ultimately decides which model wins, with your wallet, your reviews, and which dealer lot you walk back into for your next RV. The bigger picture, and why this story is just getting started. Zoom all the way out. And this isn't just a corporate reshuffle. It's a signal about where the entire RV industry is headed over the next decade. The RV market has been through a genuinely brutal cycle. The pandemic created an unprecedented boom. People wanted to travel without flying, without crowds, without hotels, and RV sales spiked to historic highs. That boom was followed by exactly what you'd expect: a hangover. Dealer lots got overstocked, interest rates climbed, consumer confidence weakened. Then tariff pressure on materials and chassis components piled on top of an already cooling market, stretching what should have been a normal correction into a longer, deeper downturn than almost anyone in the industry originally forecast. Thor's own fiscal 2026 results tell that story in real numbers. A towable segment fighting suppressed volumes and rising costs, while restructuring charges piled up quarter after quarter. This is not a company restructuring from a position of comfort. This is a company restructuring in the middle of the storm, betting that the operational muscle it builds now will make it dramatically stronger once the recovery actually arrives. Industry forecasters have projected modest single-digit growth in RV shipments heading into the back half of this decade as the market stabilizes. Thor's leadership has been explicit that they want to be structurally ready to outperform the moment that stabilization shows up, rather than scrambling to rebuild capability after the fact. There's also a bigger, quieter story here about what scale means in American manufacturing right now. For decades, the RV industry ran on the same playbook the American auto industry avoided by choice. Dozens of independently operating brands under bigger corporate umbrellas, deliberately kept separate to preserve entrepreneurial culture and brand identity. That approach worked beautifully in a growing, fragmented dealer market where more brands meant more shelf space and more customer segments covered. But dealer consolidation changes the math. When the number of dealers shrinks and the size of each dealer grows, the manufacturer with the most coordinated purchasing power, the most unified data, and the most efficient shared infrastructure gets a real structural advantage over the manufacturer still running 20 separate fiefdoms. Thor looked at that shifting landscape and made a calculated bet that coordination now beats fragmentation later. Whether that bet pays off is genuinely an open question, and it's one worth revisiting in a year or two once real results start rolling in. But here's what's not in question. The company that started in 1980 with two guys buying one bankrupt trailer manufacturer out of Ohio has grown into an operation controlling nearly half the American motorhome market. And it just proved it's still willing to fundamentally rewrite its own rulebook rather than coast on 45 years of success. That's not the move of a company playing defense. That's the move of a company trying to make sure it's still standing at the top a decade from now, no matter what the RV market throws at it next. So here's the real question this whole story leaves us with. Do you think Thor just made the smartest operational move in RV manufacturing history, positioning itself to dominate the next decade the same way the Jayco deal locked in the last one? Or do you think this is the beginning of a slow slide where beloved brands like Jayco, Tiffin, and Keystone start losing the independent character that made people fall in love with them in the first place? Drop your take in the comments. And if you own one of these brands, I genuinely want to know if you've noticed any changes yet, or if it's business as usual on your end so far. If you're new to this channel, welcome to America on Wheels. We dig into the real stories behind the vehicles Americans actually drive, the history, the business decisions, the engineering, and the moments that quietly reshape entire industries, while most people are busy just looking at the sticker price. We don't do hype for the sake of hype here. We follow the facts and let you draw your own conclusions. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the bell so you catch the next deep dive the moment it drops. We've got more stories like this one coming, breaking down the announcements, the acquisitions, and the decisions that are quietly rewriting the American vehicle industry from the inside out. Thanks for riding along with us. See you in the next one.